Welcome back to Jack's Corner, where truth and reality have a seat at the table. You know, the only way to live a healthy, productive, and happy life is to live in truth and reality. To live otherwise guarantees you failure and misery in this life and the next. Now, I know that drives the godless left up a wall when I say that, but you know, I kind of like placing that hot potato in their lap to let them deal with it. Sometimes I think I get too much joy out of just speaking the uncomfortable truth to others. But you know, I also have come to believe that they really know the truth. They just suppress it. And then I come along and remind them. I think this is funny. You can't just suppress something you don't believe exists, can you? So yes, they know the truth. There is a word that God uses to describe the suppressors of the truth, and that's the Greek word called katakain. Moreover, we are told that on Judgment Day, no one will be with excuse. Yep, no excuses. So you see, this is why the heathen rage. They are in full rebellion to reality, and that perfectly describes the Democrat left today. No, my dear heathens, men cannot become women, and there is no science to prove that. But then the Democrat left will try to make you believe otherwise. So now do you see how living outside of reality, which is called a psychosis, can be devastating? With my podcast, I try to spread the facts and truth to prevent people falling into the trap of lies. The left used to be better at nuanced lies, but now they make no pretense and have become just basically unhinged. They have resorted to name-calling such as you are a Nazi or a racist if you don't believe like they do, when in fact all their actions are just exactly what Nazis did do. Remember Biden's Secretary of Transportation who was only picked for the job because he was homosexual and married to another man? Yep, and he was the female in the relationship. Take a look at the image here. And may I ask, what were you doing during all this? Let me ask it this way. Would your checkbook and calendar show you were in the fight when Biden was destroying our country? Well, little Petey baby, talking about Buttigieg, he claimed that our transportation system, and particularly our roads, were racist, as if some inanimate object was capable of sentience. See, this is what was happening to your country while you weren't paying attention. So why do you have to fight? There is basically nowhere else to run. We cannot have a healthy and prosperous nation without a healthy and truth-centered people. With the craziness of the left, the danger comes when they start implementing policies that impact your health, wealth, freedoms, and ability to be prosperous. That is why you cannot let the lie go unchallenged, because those who believe it will act upon it to your detriment. So that is one of the big whys as to why I do this podcast. I want to live in a country of free, prosperous, healthy, and happy people. And I can't live that way if everyone around me are psychotic. Okay, with all that said, let's start with some of the headlines of today and the topics of today. I'm calling this basically Civil War 2.0. As I have addressed in a previous podcast warning about civil war, I did so because so few understand the dangers we are in. Trump is a blessing insofar as delaying what could have been and would have been inevitable if Harris had won. But if we don't recognize the danger while Trump is in office and work to dismantle the Marxist takeover in this country, we are doomed. And there will be massive civil unrest, and this time it will be you on the streets fighting for your very survival. Think about this. The whole of the Democrat Party have endorsed a communist for mayor of New York. I have been warning about this since I was 16, and now it is here. You probably don't know this, but there are socialists signing up to be mayors around the country, and some of them are Muslim. God forgive us for being so stupid and lazy. Maybe this is his judgment upon us, and we do deserve it. Now, here's something you must stop doing. Stop using the term socialist. It's communist. Socialism only came up as a euphemistic term because they knew that communism had such a bad name and reputation for killing hundreds of millions of people over the last 100 years. Here is just one more example that I'm piling on you to deprive you of any excuse or justification for doing nothing. And this is in addition to all the other evidence that I've given you in the last few months. Don't you dare claim a love for your children when you are basically going to leave them to suffer under communism. This is on you, Mom and Dad. Now, I have also been warning everybody about judicial tyranny. Now we have leftist judges colluding and contriving with the likes of Governor Pritzker of Illinois and Newsom of California. To what? To lock up ICE officers for enforcing federal immigration laws. Yes, this is insane, but that is the type of people we are dealing with. They are dangerous, malevolent, and a threat to your life. You see, the Civil War started back when Biden took office, and they tried to consolidate their power by packing the courts with judges that would implement the leftist agenda instead of basically ruling on the law. I'm hoping that Attorney General Bundy will charge, arrest, and indict judges, governors, and mayors who impede ICE from doing their jobs with regards to deporting our illegal aliens, and particularly the criminal type. Next, we have Zohran Mamdani, the communist likely to win mayor in New York City. I'm surprised that God hasn't rained down fire and brimstone on us by now and on this country for how we have fallen into such a state of chaos and utter ingratitude for what was given us. Mamdani was just pictured with an imam in New York who was tied to the bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993. Look at him. Here he is. My Lord in heaven, forgive me for hating my own kind for their utter stupidity. Remember, Mamdani is a Muslim and a communist and refuses to condemn Hamas, which, as you know or should know, is a radical Islamic terrorist organization. They've been declared that. Yes, folks, we have lost our minds and don't deserve this country in the way that we've acted and approached these types of people in this kind of radicalism. But we've gotten lazy. But this is what is coming, and the left will never give up. You just basically, if you're not paying attention, you're just not going to see it. And this is a type of illness, not only on your part, because it's psychotic not to react and do the things you need to do when you're faced with an existential threat, but this is a type of mental illness that makes the left and what Mamdani and the rest of them do so irrational, to such a degree that they are much like suicide bombers. They place no value on life, and their warped philosophies are totally consuming and controlling. I only wish Christians were the same with their faith. When Christians cannot recognize evil nor take any action against it, I believe they are falsely assured of their salvation. Now, we have a transgender movement that is getting riled up. And why is that? Well, because some sanity is prevailing in the country and the movement is collapsing according to recent polling and tracking from 2023. It shows that the interest in it has dropped by about 50%. And this is good news. But the leaders and organizers and billionaires behind it who will profit from America's collapse socially, morally, and politically will never give up. There was a recent threat made by transies that they will leave the country in protest. Well, don't let me get in their way. I can tell you in most other countries, yeah, they'll get surgeries for free, and it won't be in a hospital, and the mortality rate is most likely to be 100%, if you get what I'm meaning. I have no concern for those whose whole life is focused on their sexual gratification and activity. Think about it. The entire LGBTQ plus meaning every other perversity, is all about sex all the time. They haven't the time to be creative, productive, and a useful citizen or of benefit to anyone else, as they are consumed with their obsession with sexual pleasure, looking for the ultimate experience that will transfer them into a state of nirvana. The only thing they will be transformed into is a pit of eternal suffering. With all this said, it's just another bit of screaming evidence to which you, having heard it, will be held accountable. Evil and corruption never solve problems, they only create them. Therefore, its very existence is proof that good did nothing to prevent it. This indictment is tremendous upon all of us, and you will have to give an account as to what you did or didn't do. Be warned again that we are embarking upon civil war, and you will be forced into it. You will have to decide whether you want to live in servitude or fight for your freedom. You see, the left is not going to give you a choice. Fight or die. This is where good people doing nothing has landed us. God forgive us for our indolence and ingratitude. Now, for the latest installment of Hypocrisy of today's Democrat left, let's start with the Democrat Attorney General candidate in Virginia, who fantasized about killing a Republican and seeing his children die. He was so foolish to text it to another, and it has gone viral. It's gone nationwide. This was not a mere indiscretion. It was revelatory as to his heart condition, what he really believes deep down. The Virginia Democrat candidate for governor, Spansberg, was confronted, and she went silent. She would not call on Jones to drop out of the race. And she has even campaigned with this, what I call a reprobate. Other Democrats, including Governor Beshear of Kentucky, said, well, Jones was okay because he said he was sorry. You see, if you are a Democrat, all you need to do and say is you're sorry, and you're absolved. But don't let that happen to a Republican. You'll never be forgiven. Now we have a Democrat candidate in Maine trying to defeat Senator Susan Collins. It's been revealed that he has a Nazi swastika tattoo. Now, look at this picture. But that is forgiven and okay. Why? Because he's a Democrat. Talk about hypocrisy, folks. I just don't know how you've lived with it this long and not cast these people out into the darkness. Now, if that was a Republican, he'd be removed from the race in a heartbeat, and you know it. Just think this guy from Maine could be making decisions on national policy that will affect you in Florida, Texas, Kentucky, Iowa, and on and on. Now do you see why we are close to civil war? What happens in another state does affect you and will affect you. That's why in previous podcasts I've given you some action plans and things that you need to do, not just in your own state, but in contributing and doing things and helping Republican candidates and conservative candidates in other states. I could write without pause listing all the hypocritical things the Democrats do. They are the worst of humanity. They promise you everything knowing that they cannot deliver you anything. And they don't plan to deliver you anything. All they want is power. They and their types around the world are destroyers of society and individuals. They have nothing to offer you but misery, and that, my friends, is factual and historical. Yet what is sad here is there is always an audience for their lies. The only way to stop it is at the grassroots level, and that starts at the local church and you speaking, living, and spreading the truth. Now, the Democrat-led shutdown of the government is upon us, and this is totally the Democrats' fault. You know, there's some people out there that just simply don't understand that. They think it's the Republicans' fault, but almost every Republican has voted to keep the government open, but in order to reopen it, it takes 7 more Democrats to cross over and vote to open the government. Wake up, people. This is a Democrat-led government shutdown. Yep, the number 2 Democrat in the House admitted that the shutdown was political and for leverage, despite the fact that many families were suffering. She said all that. How many more lies are you willing to tolerate from this group? 7 Democrats, like I just said, are keeping the government shut down. Now, I want to move on to what I call Kentucky's big problem, and it's a national one. And Kentucky's big problem, and unfortunately it has become, like I said, a national one, is Kentucky is a deep red state with Republicans having supermajorities in both the state Senate and state House. The citizens of Kentucky voted over 60% for President Trump, but you wouldn't know that based upon the way Kentucky's federal delegation opposes Trump way too often. That's where it becomes a national problem. Kentucky has a terrible reputation in the White House. Nearly half of our Republican delegation in D.C. have not gotten the message. but there are two in particular that are particular problems, and that is Thomas Massie and Rand Paul. Representative Thomas Massie from the 4th District of Kentucky has gone rogue and does not represent the constituents of his district. The problem there is at least 1/3 of the people in the 4th District don't even know who he is, nor what he has done or what he's doing or what he's not doing. They wrongly assume simply because he's a Republican that he is in sync with the rest of the party and the White House. No, he's not. If they only knew, they would be very unhappy and vote him out. Because of his conduct, people are beginning to catch on, and he now has a primary opponent, thank goodness. Usually incumbents are relatively safe if they are doing a good job. Not Massie. He has opposed Trump at every turn and was the only Republican to vote against the big, beautiful bill, which, if it had not passed, would have given the Democrats a huge victory and advantage. It would have stopped the funding for border security and deportations, among many other things. In fact, you would have received the largest tax increase in history, averaging about $2,500 per family. Think about this. Massie was the only Republican in the House out of 218 to vote against Trump's bill. What a narcissist. How self-absorbed can you be? Massie has accomplished nothing while in office. He's very unpopular, and clearly his justification for positions have zero support. He's a lone ranger. He has nothing to offer, and insofar as Kentucky is concerned, he's a detriment to the state and the Kentucky Republican Party brand. Kentuckians have a chance next year to rid itself of this obstructionist, as he is being primaried come May 26, and he can be defeated. Kentucky needs to replace him with someone that will put Kentucky first and also help out President Trump. Now, as for my friend Rand Paul, and I do call him a friend, but it doesn't mean just because I'm a friend that I'm going to have to agree with him on everything. And I think when he's wrong, I'm going to call him out. I'm going to call any Republican out when they're wrong. And I'm very disappointed in him because he's become an obstructionist as well. He's devoted to a philosophy and has put that losing philosophy and himself above the interest of Kentucky voters. He is at odds with President Trump, and this is damaging to Kentucky. Again, this is all about Rand's libertarian views. But what about Kentucky? How about doing something for Kentucky? Let me remind people that the radical leftist governor, Andy Beshear, won because of the libertarians. In fact, the libertarians were gleeful over defeating our Republican governor, and now we have a Nancy Pelosi-type governor who hopes to run for president. Beshear supports everything that Pelosi supports. He would be a Biden 2.0. Now, Mitch McConnell has taken his personal grudge with the president too far, but votes more with the president in Republicans than the other two that I've just mentioned. While this has not helped Kentucky either, he's more moderated than the others, but he's not seeking re-election and he's retiring soon, so it's useless to spend any time on that. Folks, here's your action plan. You must start calling Paul's offices in D.C. and in Kentucky and let him know just how unhappy you are with his opposition to the president. None of his votes should side with the Democrats. He will give you the song and dance about the debt. Yes, we are all concerned about the national debt, but he's the only one out there, along with Massie, talking about it. Moreover, they have no solutions other than the arcane ones we have already heard before that will not work nor get any support. What Paul and Massie miscalculated is that Trump's tariffs will bring down the debt as it is flooding the country with hundreds of billions of dollars. The stock market is going crazy. Interest rates are coming down. Trump is going to grow us out of our debt issue and our debt problem instead of painfully cutting spending where 3/4 of our economy and budget cannot be cut as they are entitlements. Paul and Massie miscalculated and clearly didn't think outside the box like Trump did. All they accomplished is giving Kentucky a black eye with the White House and other national Republican leaders. Kentucky needs help from Washington, but don't count on it with the way that its federal delegation has been treating the president. Folks, Paul and Massey have no plan that have any political reality. Moreover, they have no supporters. They are the only ones behind their issue. That means they are really poor salesmen, as they cannot attract any other Republicans to support their cause. They are the sole Republicans and are aligning themselves with Democrats. They are operating outside of reality, pushing a selfish agenda of their own and doing damage to Kentucky as they do it. They need to start cooperating with President Trump, start focusing on Kentucky, or leave. Now, to my friends in Indiana and former conservative Senator Todd Young. Yes, he's still a senator, but he was much different when he first ran. He's becoming the Republicans' new Adam Kinzinger. This haggard image of Young, once what I would call a conservative, has gone soft. He seems to need attention and seems to want to be loved by the left. Another Republican disappointment. So it's time for my Hoosier friends across the river to be flooding Young's offices with complaints as to how weak and compromised he's become. He is opposing Trump more and more and siding with the Democrats. If he keeps it up, he will go the way of Kinzinger. Now, I'm sure you're not going to be surprised by this. A pink-haired radical at the University of Arizona called Turning Point USA activists Nazis and told them, "Watch your neck," in a blatant reference to the assassination of the organization's founder and free speech martyr, Charlie Kirk. She did this as she passed by a TPUSA display table on the campus. Yes, the left are psychopaths and dangerous. They should never again hold any position of power or authority, and much less in your schools. Folks, remind teachers today that God was warned that if you harm an innocent, a child that is, whether it be physically or mentally, with the lies they spread in schools, those teachers will end up in hell as well. As it was said by Christ, harm an innocent, then it would be better for you on Judgment Day if you had never been born. And to the teachers, you have no excuse and cannot blame your higher-ups that you had to do it. That will not be an excuse, an acceptable excuse on Judgment Day. Now, I love this one. I mean, pictures are worth 1,000 words, but you're going to see a picture of former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot. She's spearheading a project to reveal the names and locations of ICE officials. I mean, that's reprehensible. While pro-migration activists are trying to block American law enforcement. Of course, this Democrat leftist was a lesbian married to another woman. You just can't expect anything normal from a Democrat these days. Well, how about this likeness? Actor Michael Keaton is playing a dead person, and oh, what a metaphor and resemblance in this picture. Lightfoot, as are all the Democrat left, they are all what I call the walking dead and have no future. Folks, I really don't think the citizens of Chicago deserve saving. Just build a wall around them and call it a mental institution. I'm calling for free Illinois because but for Chicago and the psychos there that keep voting these reprobates into office, the rest of Illinois is red. Now, I want you to think about this. The next time a white liberal or leftist calls you a racist, accusing you of white privilege, I want you to remind them that there are over 2 million black millionaires in this country. There are 1.2 million Latino millionaires, and there are 1.2 million Asian millionaires. So shove this down the liberals' throat the next time they try to accuse you of being a racist. If there was a magic genie, I would ask that all white liberals and leftists be denaturalized and deported. Folks, it's time to get in their faces. Now, this next item I want to talk about is it's a Mamdani update. Communism always comes with a smile and ends with an execution. The Democrat candidate for New York City mayor, and you've heard it before, Zohran Mamdani, a self-proclaimed socialist, and remember I told you not to use the term socialist, but he's a communist, but all of his policy statements are from the Communist Manifesto and Playbook. And he is vilifying of late Immigration and Custom Enforcement, that is, ICE agents, while vowing to make the city's sanctuary policy even more extreme. Can you imagine that? This is an obstruction of justice, folks. Come on, Attorney General Pam Bondi. You have the legal elements to cuff Johnson of Chicago, Governor Pritzker, and Governor Newsom, and any other elected official that attempts to impede the enforcement of federal immigration laws. Think about this. 24 years after Islamists tore down the trade towers, the World Trade Tower centers in New York City, a Muslim is likely to be mayor? Have we lost our mind? Are we insane? Shame on us. 9/11, we celebrate that every year as one of the most horrific things that ever happened to America. The destruction of the World Trade Tower centers, and we all saw those trade tower centers come down. And why? Because it was radical Islamist. And it's no different than the guy that's about to become mayor. So in just 24 years, that's how much we have decayed in this country. Try this one on for size. Mamdani said during Wednesday night's debate that his political beliefs are rooted in believing that human rights extend to queer and trans individuals, including queer and trans Ugandans specifically. Wake up, America, and stop calling him a socialist. That is just a euphemistic term for communism. Let's call him what he is. Hundreds of thousands of young American servicemen lost their lives defending this country over the last few decades from communism. And now the communists are running for election in this country and in our cities? Have you lost your minds? You can't sit on the couch and just watch Netflix anymore. You have to get engaged. Now, moving on to China, get this. Researchers say that they found that China's TikTok systematically boosts content to favor New York City mayoral candidate Zohran and against former New York City Mayor Cuomo, using its content algorithm. The team asserts that this goes beyond simple bias into a new area of algorithmic steering. Now, please tell me you are not surprised of this course of conduct from China. China wants a communist as mayor of New York. Okay, I'm tired of talking about Mamdani. Let's go to Bad Bunny. How crazy is that? And Richard Goodell, commissioner of the NFL. And he thinks it's just fine for this freaking pervert to perform at halftime at the Super Bowl. Folks, Goodell is one of those most sickening examples of the corporate world. He's a whore for the dollar and morally bankrupt. How do you deal with someone like him who seems to be so out of reach? Well, it's simple. You've done it before. Remember? It's Bud Lighting. Bud Light lost billions of dollars because you took action. Well, this might be a sacrifice for you, but we are where we are in this country because you have made so little sacrifices to protect your country, your freedoms, and your kids. It has been your spending habits that has caused this. Stop and make a list of all the alternative things you, your family, and friends could do during Super Bowl halftime. At the very least, write letters and make calls that you have organized a group to turn off the TV during halftime. In fact, TPUSA has a plan for that as well. Let's make this a national campaign. What good does this do, you say? Well, the advertisers will drop what they will pay for the advertising slots, and that's a lot of money for halftime at the Super Bowl, or even during the Super Bowl. Remember, you cost Bud Light billions. And remember that marketing creep that had transy Dylan Mulvaney as the spokesperson for Bud Light? She got fired because of the action you took. Then, as a second layer to this campaign against those who do advertising during the halftime, give them an earful and let them know that the Bud Lighting will extend to them as well. Watch those rats scurry then. Believe me, they pay attention to public opinion. And they will remember Bud Light. They don't want that happening to them. If you make a big enough noise, when those advertising dollars dry up, you'll see changes made at the upper echelons within the NFL. I can't wait for the day until Goodell is gone. Now, moving on, here's one for you. Senate Democrats blocked the GOP-sponsored bill to pay military federal workers during the shutdown. Now, this is indefensible. Now, do you want to coddle family, friends, and acquaintances who support these types of people? I don't, and I won't. Here's a thought for you as to how to control crime. Now, I mean, this might be a bit excessive, but back during the reign of General Franco, who ruled Spain and whose magnificent tomb I visited in Spain, he dictated that if you were implicated in a crime, then you went to jail and your family, all your family, lost their jobs. Here's what a family discussion would look like back in those days in 1950s Spain. Hey, Carlos, where are you going? Where do you think you're going tonight? No, you're not. Not without your brother Sanchez. And you better be back in 20 minutes. And if you're not, you don't have to worry about the government getting you because we will take you out and we'll make you disappear from the world. Okay, now I'm not a fan of Franco, and I don't need lectures as to the politics of World War II. I'm an historian as well, and I know. I'm just making a point about accountability, as there has to be a consequence and punishment for the greater good. Accountability starts with the family. Some say to me, "Oh, Jack, that's not fair." My response is, well, what does fair have to do with it? Look at the mess we have already made of the world with our toxic toleration. Now, here's another thought for you. Did you ever stop to think that the proponents of globalism were of the same spirit as those who were dispersed after the Tower of Babel? God dispersed us and didn't give us instructions to reverse the curse. In fact, it was a protection, and multiculturalism has failed and has destroyed societies. Europe is gone. Germany is gone. I've seen the statistics. And when you take a look at England, oh my goodness, a majority of the folks in London are now Muslim. Can you imagine that? What we've done to ourselves. They are now being overtaken by Satan's biggest footprint in the world, and that is Islam. I curse those who in their hedonism push the globalism agenda in their ignorance of Scripture. Now, I can't pass this one up. Veteran Democrat strategist James Carville spelled out his fantasy dream for punishing Trump's collaborators after the president leaves office in 2029. He said their heads should be shaved, they should be clad in orange jumpsuits, and then march down Pennsylvania Avenue while the public spits on them. Yeah, this was Clinton's advisor. And this is one of the biggest leftists there is around there, still basically advising the Democrat Party. Have you ever noticed how, looking at this picture, have you ever noticed and thought about how some people wear the evil that's on the inside on their outside as well? Now let's go to this next topic. Monsters do exist. And it's time to pray a curse upon them. What I mean by that? Well, a new clinic opened up in Boulder, Colorado that offers to abort babies up to 34 weeks of pregnancy for any reason, which is 10 weeks after most babies can survive outside the womb and roughly 6 weeks before a baby is considered full term. Colorado, once a Republican stronghold, is now deeply blue, which means deeply corrupt and wicked. Here's the governor of Colorado, Jared Polis, and his wife, or husband, who knows? And just take a look at this. When will Christians connect the dots? The gay stuff is the bloom on the rot. What else would you expect of a state governed and led by this couple than to support ripping viable babies out of the womb? I curse them and pray that God will remove this kind of evil in killing children. It is this gay Jewish billionaire and others like him who helped flip the state blue. It is a spiritually dark state. Bastions of corruption like this need to be isolated, and you do that with your wallet as well as your vocalization and your disgust for them. All right, I can't pass this one up. And this has to do with Representative Eric Swalwell of California. He said that Republicans should worry because when we're in power, he referring to the Democrats, there's going to be accountability. Imagine that. That's a word that Republicans don't know. That's a word that a lot of conservatives don't know. When was the last time we've ever held anybody accountable? We don't. Well, he was not held accountable, having shacked up with a Chinese spy. And yes, he's still in Congress. Well, what Swalwell means by accountable is judicial lawfare and unconstitutional use of the courts to persecute political opponents. What Republicans must do with all their power is to investigate and prosecute the Democrats for all their corruption in the 4 years of the Biden term. And Mr. Swalwell was the California representative caught having an affair with his Chinese spy known as, get this, Fang Fang. Folks, you just can't make this stuff up. Swalwell is a disgusting reprobate. Folks, the left kept telling you who and what they are and what they will do to you if they get back into power. So you have to fight while you can, and this is the time to do it. And you've got to get up off your chairs and your couches, and you've got to take some of the action plans that I've already given you. Well, here's a good one for you that I just had to share with you. It just proves again how the left deceive you with what's called linguistic appropriation, wherein they redefine words like they redefine history. The far left president, now see, it doesn't matter whether the left is here in this country or another country, they're all the same. And the far left president, the communist president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, who last Thursday, he suggested that men who traffic drugs on boats should be called drug trafficking workers instead of drug traffickers, as the latter is too insulting, he said. Folks, I would like to place the Democrat left on the terrorist watch list because they are such a danger to you and your family. Now, I've got another one here for you, and I just keep adding to this to instill in your mind the nature and the character of the left. They can't be trusted with anything, much less power. And I keep saying just one more topic, but let me give you this one, and let me leave you with this and let your brain see this in all caps, if you will. You cannot be Islamophobic enough. Did you get that? You cannot be anti-Islamic enough. We are in the midst of the fourth jihad. Look it up and what the plan entails. Every major city in England has an Islamist mayor. Now we are looking at it at an Islamist as mayor of New York. I cannot begin to describe the hatred I have for the evil of liberals and leftists. Worse is the disgust I have for people on my side of the spectrum who are abject cowards. Here's another one for you. Do you believe in something so much that you're willing to die for it? Give that some thought. Is there anything in your life that you believe so deeply that you would actually sacrifice your life for it? Are you willing to storm the gates of hell? Are you willing to die for your eternal salvation? If not, I pity you because you have fallen in love with a life that you cannot keep and sacrificed a life eternal. Think about that. Outside of your family, do you live for a cause bigger than you? Well, the left will die for a lie, but you won't for the truth. Sleep on that one for a while. Well, that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jack Richardson for Jack's Corner.